Welcome to Backstreet Gossip, news talk, current events, and political commentary with your host, Uncle Ronnie. And now here's your host, Uncle Ronnie.
Hello, and welcome to Backstreet Gossip. It's a beautiful day here in Arizona, and as usual, we have Mr. Ray Michaels.
Hello, everyone.
And Senator Eddie Farnsworth.
I've been called worse.
So, Senator, this is 2021. Right now, I can see if it was back in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, where these are mechanical machines. But everything is computerized now, isn't it?
Electronic.
I mean, when you open if I wanted to check a computer, I would take it to a computer expert, and I'd say, could you please do this? And with the number of keystrokes, he would find out if it was operating. He wouldn't start taking apart the physical computer unless he got to a point. I mean, how do you feel about this?
Well, I think that actually you look at both pieces. You look at the hardware. They have to make sure that it's scanning properly. And the scanning mechanism is really twofold. You have the software certainly that is driving the scan, but you have the hardware that has to work properly as well. And so looking at the machines, in your analogy of a computer, that somebody may go in, a computer expert, and look at the software and say, it's not the software, that's working fine. And so what do? They go in and look at the hard drive. They open it up and look at the ROM. They look at all of those things to make sure that the hardware is working properly. So I think it's legitimate in this kind of an audit. This is a very kind of narrow, very specific audit. That they looked at the hardware and that they looked at the code and the software.
Were they able to look at any of the images of the ballots to say, this image looks off? Or were they just running new things through the equipment?
Here's the test and the objectives. They had four objectives. Let's go through them one at a time. Determine if installed software was US EAC and Arizona SOS certified. Now, EAC is the Election, Accuracy Commission?
Yeah, something like that.
That's a federal commission. Mm-hmm. And then SOS, ladies and gentlemen, is the Arizona Secretary of State certified.
I thought it was Save Our Ship.
Save Our Ship. We also know that the Republican Party was not there for that certification.
I think they were uninvited, but the Women's League of Voters was there.
No, this was the certification beforehand.
Before,
Chernetsky did not show up for that. Okay, so that was one item. The second one is the determination if any malicious malware or hardware was installed into the system or equipment. Okay. 3, determine if the tabulators were connected to the internet. Big deal. Okay, I mean, that's their audit. And number 4, perform logic and accuracy tests to determine if the vote switching could have occurred. This is nonsense. This is absolutely utter nonsense. And what I want to do right now, and if you will enjoy this little responsibility.
Indulge, Uncle Ron.
I have right here in my hands, I have a calculator. And let's certify that this calculator works properly. This is one of the tests that they did. So if you will, turn that on. And I have a set of numbers that I'm going to read to you.
Okay.
This is the input. 5, 10.
Plus, I assume.
And 15. What is your answer?
Hang on. I messed up there. 5.
10 and 15.
30.
Right. Okay, so I know that machine counts to 30. Now, Ray, let's test it again. We'll both certify that comes up with the same answer.
All right, hold on. Let me just get out my screwdriver.
No, you can't tamper.
Okay. All right. It's not tampering.
Okay, now you've got numbers in front of you. Read your numbers off.
Okay, 5 plus 10 plus 15 comes out to 30.
That equipment, I will certify, is correct. Will you correct? Would you?
That is correct.
Okay, that is correct, yes.
Okay, so that's the audit. That's one of the audits. We've certified that this piece of equipment right here, you've seen it here, ladies and gentlemen, adds up to 30.
So you've certified that whatever numbers are put into that machine, that it is adding correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, put the same numbers. You've got another set of numbers. Let's put those in.
Okay.
Okay, let me turn this guy on. Okay, give me those set of numbers.
6.
6.
17.
17.
And 15.
And 15. And that comes up to 38. Okay, now, what have we learned out of this? We've learned that whatever we put in, we will get out. That's what we know. This will come up with that. So now we know that this audit is a sham audit, ladies and gentlemen, because a very simple thing, the adding machine is correct. It's what you put in that you really need to determine is correct.
So what you're saying is the machines are controlled by whoever is programming them or inputting the information.
And do we know that those votes have all been cast by legal citizens? No, we don't know that. Do we know that all of the numbers there have been verified as voters? Have they gone through? Have their signatures been checked? No, we don't know that.
Do the images match the original ballots?
We don't know that. So this is a sham audit, ladies and gentlemen, and the Board of Supervisors ought to be terribly embarrassed over this. And, you can't blame the guys that were hired to do this. They did what they were hired to do. These four things are not an audit whatsoever. They're just a check. And this is what you would expect, by the way, from a technician, not an auditor, a technician.
So
yes, this machine does add properly.
So Senator Farnsworth, you were there from the beginning demanding that the Arizona Board of Supervisors present and provide all the information that they have. You were there at the beginning. They argued that that was the previous session. You are now out of office. We do thank you for the 18 years of service.
You're welcome.
Are you happy sitting as chair of the Judicial Committee, right? You were there
yes.
for many years. Are you happy with what the Arizona Board of Supervisors provided? And was this the original intent of you and everyone in the Senate getting together to have brought back to you?
You mean this audit?
This audit, right
so-called
here.
audit?
Yeah.
Yes, I was there from the beginning. In fact, I issued the original subpoenas, and with the Senate President Karen Fann. And then my time ran out because I didn't run again, as you know. So in January, when the new legislature was seated, Warren Peterson, who actually was my seatmate, was then appointed to be the chair of the Judiciary Committee. He reissued the subpoenas, effectively the exact same subpoenas, and the Board of Supervisors believed that it was going to go away because it ended up going. It was past the January 6th, the certification of the electoral vote. When we made it clear that that wasn't the case, that this had nothing to do with overturning of the election, which is one of their claims, one of the arguments that they made, then they took a different position. But their position changed, and it just kind of ebbed and flowed. The purpose was to have a broader, to get specifically to your question, the purpose and intent was to get to a much broader forensic audit. Now, I think that the information that we have that the machines work, for example, looking at that calculator and determining that it's actually adding numbers correctly is important. You know, as a CPA or accountant, if it weren't, you'd mess everything up and you'd have liability and all kinds of problems.
But it's not an audit is what I'm saying.
Correct, and I know you're saying that. That's the point I'm making is it's not that what they're doing is not appropriate. It is appropriate to make sure that the machines are functioning properly, that the software is working properly, but that's not an audit, not a full forensic audit. So the answer is no. This does not satisfy what the legislature wants, nor what President Fann and I intended when I issued the subpoenas. And what we were looking for then and what the Senate is still looking for is to look at the ballots to make sure that there was nothing there. I've said many times, including on this show more than once, there was no predisposed conclusion. When I issued the audits, it wasn't because I was looking for a specific outcome. In fact, I also stated very clearly publicly, I hope we don't find anything. The intent was one of two things, either to find something and fix it, or to not find anything and say, look, we can have confidence in the outcome of this election.
Yes.
Not the outcome that we necessarily want. As a Republican, I didn't want Joe Biden to be the president. But if the election was fair and accurate and open And we have to reinstill that in the people in Arizona so they have confidence in future elections.
Exactly.
That was the purpose and intent, and that continues to be the purpose and intent. And you can't get there with that so-called audit that the board did. So no, we have to go broader.
You know, and I've said this before as well, and so it's going to be redundant, but it may not be to our audience, and that is, audits are about compliance. They're not caused by any wrongdoing. They're caused by compliance to see if everything has been run according to the rules that you're supposed to operate under, and that's the fact. Now, as you just said, one of two things is going to happen. Either you did not comply with the rules or you did comply with the rules. There could be some variance there. You might have complied with some, but not all. But that's what you'll find out in an audit. All of this says is this machine adds correctly. And you have a zero on here, which you always start by clearing it and having the zero at the top, which leads me to the next thing. Where are the paperwork that says all the machines were set to zero? How is that confirmed? And that's part of a forensic audit. It's not part of this thing where you have technicians saying, yeah, it adds up properly. To add it up properly, they would have had to have done that too, to add to zero those machines out. Did they do that during the election? Now, what they might have done is during the test that they made, they might have zeroed it out, put a deck of cards through there, and then come out with an answer. But did they do that? Where are the tabulations for all of the materials that they've gone? Every machine needed to be retabulated, and then you got, well, there's an old expression, you've heard it years ago, but it still stands. Garbage in, garbage out. If you put trash into a computer or adding machine, that's what you're going to get out. Same thing.
Right.
Now, the judge was very clear on a number of things, and this is one of the big concerns was that if the judges had ruled against the Senate, what would have happened is effectively the county would have been elevated to be on par in authority and position as the legislature, a co-equal branch, if you will. And that was really what they were arguing, the Board of Supervisors, without specifically arguing that. Within the confines of the argument was they didn't have to answer to the legislature. They didn't have to provide information from the audit or from the subpoena and comply. And the judge basically said none of that is true. He went after the issue of confidentiality. He went after the issue of separation of powers. He went after the issue of the ludicrous position. In fact, twice he refers to their arguments as absurd. And he also points out that one of the arguments they made that they could not release these images to the legislature during because there was a law that said that they had to hold on to them for 24 months, 22 months, and they had to be sealed. If you remember, I said that makes absolutely no sense. You seal them, they can never be open. Why do you keep them? Why not just trash them?
Right. Put it through the shredder.
Correct. It is perfectly legitimate for a government entity with the responsibility for oversight to be able to get into those to review and make sure it was done properly. The judge concurred, and he said, in fact, he kind of scolds them in a way by saying, look, you have admitted that you're violating the law by not having transferred those ballots over to the state treasurer, which is where they're supposed to be housed. The county supervisors still have those ballots, and he says, you've broken the law while arguing that you can't pass these on to the legislature because it would break the law. I mean, the position that the county took with their attorneys is really just very disturbing. What's really disappointing at this point now is that the County Board of Supervisors is trying to spin the outcome of this as if, okay, the chairman just came out with a letter that said, now that we know, the judge has clarified, now we know, we can move forward. And
like they didn't have a clue before.
Maybe it was above their pay grade.
Well, but it's inconsistent with their arguments because they didn't ask the judge to just clarify or have a declaration, which is what the judge did. They asked the judge to quash the subpoenas. They asked him to make them go away so that they don't have to comply. So now to make the argument that, well, the judge has now clarified it, Remember on a couple shows ago, I said if they really wanted to comply, they could go in and ask the judge for some kind of declaration and be given confidence that they could come in and do what we're saying they can do. They didn't do that. They fought it and said that they wanted it to be quashed. So that's the problem now, is we're seeing spin. I would feel much better about this if the board came out and said, you know what, we just simply were wrong. We're wrong. We're going to comply. We shouldn't have done it. We should have complied to begin with. I would have respect for that, but to now try to spin it, and now you have Steve Gallardo, who, as I said, isn't the sharpest tool in the shed, but he's out there now arguing that the reason why this was done was for the simple fact that the legislature wants to suppress more votes, and that's why the legislature wants to do all this. I mean, the positions that are coming out, this absurd position and spin is continuing, and so it continues to be a problem that continues to be disappointing.
Now, in the words of the judge, do you see anything that he had there that would prohibit President Fan and the entire Senate from getting exactly what they want and the exact amount that they want?
Absolutely not. In fact, he basically said made it very clear that the Senate has the authority.
So his ruling basically said, carte blanche, you can do whatever you want, those are yours. So now it's up to the Senate to decide how much of an audit that they want. Is that what you're saying?
In my opinion, right now, President Fan and the Senate, they have the authority to perform as broad an audit as they want to. They have access to all of the records. They should, if again, assuming that the board makes good on their promise that now there's an order against them, that they will, or I should say a declaration, that they will provide all of that information, make it available, including the ballots. Now, I don't think the Senate wants to go through 2.1 million physical ballots. We've talked about that. The CVR is the big issue. It can be scanned. Right. If there are questions about it, then they can go back and audit 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, 500,000, whatever a true forensic auditor is going to say is statistically viable and significant. So, but yes, I believe it's up to them to decide how broad the scope of the audit is going to be.
So over the weekend, I was able to sit in on some meetings with some high-profile people that are focused on the election and the integrity and transparency of that election. And there's rumors going around that the Senate may only audit about 10% of the votes. Are you familiar with any of this? Have you heard any of this in the hubbub?
My guess would be, and I don't know, I haven't sat down and talked about the scope since I think President Fan decided to create a scope to find somebody to come and do the audit. I haven't talked to her specifically about the scope changing, but my guess would be that would refer to the physical ballots, not the CVR. The CVR can be scanned. Once you start scanning the CVR, at least one piece of technology I know of will scan, I'm told, by somebody who's involved in that it'll scan 500,000 ballots an hour.
So for our viewers, you're talking about the images of the actual ballots.
Correct. Now remember that these machines, every time somebody puts their ballot into the machine, not only does it come up and tabulate, but it also takes a picture. Mm-hmm. And then those pictures are serialized, so you can go back later and look at them and make sure you know which ones you have. It'll check for duplications, it'll check for fold marks, it'll check for all of those types of things. And plus, so I think the intent has always been, let's run a scan of the CVR. That's the image file for the ballots. Mm-hmm. Let's run a scan of the CVR. Let's make sure that we believe that they're valid, that there aren't duplications, etc. One example is this scan will show if these ballots, and all the early ballots should be folded. Right. Because they go into an envelope.
And it will actually show that it was folded.
It will scan, because when you fold a piece of paper, it breaks the fibers, and the scan will pick that up, and it'll be able to tell you, no, these weren't. So, well, if they're not folded, what does that tell you? They probably didn't go in an envelope, and they were probably pre-printed and run through inappropriately. Mm-hmm. That's the importance of the CVR scan. But they can do a comparison with the actual paper ballots, which Arizona still requires that paper ballots be used.
Right.
I imagine that would be in the 10%, 15%, maybe even 20%.
So if you were still head of the Judicial Committee and you were working with President Fan, what would your criteria be to choose the audit, or hopefully multiple audit companies that would specialize in certain areas? Maybe one is an expert in forensic, maybe one is an expert in cybersecurity. What would be your criteria or your recommendation to the Senate?
Well, as we've looked, and I did look at a number of companies, I think that we have to have people who are experienced in this kind of arena. That doesn't mean that they have to be accountants. It means that you're talking about technology people that can
Right.
look at the technology, look at the way the technology is working, look at the statistics of these things. So we're talking about people who have experience in a very specific kind of field. I think that there are a number of companies out there that are doing that. I would also look for people who have experience doing these types of audits. One type of audit isn't necessarily experience in another type of audit. Now, it can translate, but I would look and see if I could find somebody that has experience in doing these types of voting audits. I would look for somebody who has a successful track record in doing these kinds of voting audits. Those are the types of things. There are a number of companies that have, I think, international experience in this kind of auditing. And so that would probably be my criteria.
Now, Uncle Ron, I know that Liz Harris has been working with thousands of volunteers that have been going out door to door, doing all this stuff. And she had been talking about bringing in Pulitzer to come in and be part of this.
Well, I don't think the Senate wants certified people to do this, and Pulitzer is not certified. But I wanted to go back to one other thing, Ray. Do you remember when we had Supervisor Chukri here?
Yes.
And we asked him, and I think Art Cooper was here, and we were specific about that voter count record.
Right.
Or the vote count record, not voter count record, and that is how many ballots actually came into the machines and how many were counted. And that, have you heard anything about that, Senator, where those numbers have been looked at and that is certified that, say, the number that the judge used, I think, was 2.1 million ballots were cast here, and therefore, at the other side, 2.1 million ballots should have been counted. Now, that's ballots, folks. It doesn't matter how they were voted. It's just the number of pieces of paper that went through the machines to be counted.
Right.
Have you any knowledge of whether those numbers are balanced or unbalanced?
I don't have any idea. Here, to this date, the only group that has had anything to do with auditing has been controlled by the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors.
This seems to be a no-brainer that they should have released that information as soon as the election
That's the
was
number
certified.
that everybody's looking for.
Right. As soon as the election was certified, that number should have been made public. We got 2.1 million votes in, or ballots in. We counted 2.1 million. Now, there's another issue here, Ray, and this is the really important thing. We already said that this machine is certified to be correct. The question is, are these little pieces of paper that have the numbers that we put into it correct? If these are not correct, this machine will represent the incorrect numbers, and it will do its job and do it thoroughly. Now, the question then becomes one, okay, do we have illegal voters? The simple fact there is, we know there is. We don't know how many, but there have been illegal voters. Liz Harris has found that out. She found out that there are people that are registered with their home address as the county recorder's office. There are people that are registered in vacant fields. That's their home, in a vacant field. Now, they could be homeless, but I doubt the numbers that she was reflecting it would be a pretty jam-packed open field.
Yeah.
And we have no knowledge of the fact that whether all of the people whose ballots came in one form or another were in fact checked. Now, just for you out there, if you get an early ballot, you must sign the envelope. How many of those signatures had been verified against the signatures on hand on your voter registration card?
Right.
These are all questions that a forensic audit will find.
Well, even more than that. Now, I'm not a techie at all, but somebody can go into the computer system and find out if anything was altered before, anything could be changed on certain dates, if they used fractions as opposed to one vote, one ballot. There's a lot of things that are inside the computer that somebody would have to go into that would need to be an expert on. I would think that that would be an important part, because you can program a computer to say, okay, do this up until this time and then change it and then go back. And the average person like me, non-techie, would never ever know. But we need those experts like you had mentioned, Senator.
And some of those may be very difficult. For example, I believe the machines have the ability to accept some kind of external card.
Right, a USB flash drive.
Correct. So if you did that and you did a temporary overwrite of the coding, I don't know. I'm not a coder. I don't know. I understand the concepts, but if you did a temporary overwrite of the coding, would there be an electronic trail showing that? I don't know. That's why it's important to not only audit the machines and the code and the software, but also the physical ballot. That's why we require physical ballots in Arizona, and that's why we require them to be held for 2 years.
It seems to me that the chain of custody is one of the most vital points.
Exactly.
And it seems to me that once a machine is there, that there's a locking tab on it, and anything that happens there, whether it's a USB drive, whether somebody has to check something, that they would have to document going in, here's what I did, and coming out, so that chain of custody can stay. Because once the ballot goes in, anything can happen. The machine could be moved. Somebody could put a flash drive in. They could hook it onto the internet and transfer data. Every person that touches that machine should have a chain of custody. Would you agree?
I would agree. I think chain of custody is one of the things that I've talked about, that I don't know that we have a secure enough chain of custody. But we could say the same thing about the ballots. This is one of the reasons why the legislature has taken a position to really tighten down on ballot harvesting. We used to have people would go out and they would gather literally cases full of ballots. We don't have any idea if the person that voted agreed to that. We don't know if they were coerced. We don't know if it was changed after the fact.
Or paid off.
Right. We don't know if it was changed after the fact, if they were paid off. We didn't. And so we really tightened down on who could take a ballot in for somebody else. And there has to be a pretty close relationship to do so. And then I think we capped it at 5 or 10. I don't remember.
How do you feel about the bills that have been presented? I don't know if you're following this now or you're just enjoying your free time after being out of office and all this craziness going on. But do you see some of the bills that are now coming to vote with regard to voter integrity?
I've seen some. Just to kind of follow up on what you're saying, I am enjoying being out of the legislature very much. I'm enjoying my time. It would be nicer if there weren't COVID and I could actually do other things, but it is what it is. But I do pay attention a little bit. I still have conversations with individuals that want to talk to me about the history of bills, et cetera.
Well, just your experience is worth more than anything I can imagine. I mean, you've been there, you've sat there. The consulting that you could give somebody is pretty amazing.
And I'm still doing that. I still have people call and talk to me. And so I am aware of it. I don't follow closely, but I am aware of it. Probably the biggest bill that I think is kind of causing some waves, which is what we saw 2 or 3 years ago when we did the same bill, it's an effort to clean up the permanent early voting list, PEVL. Mm-hmm. And what we have right now is basically, if you get onto PEVL, it is truly permanent. You don't come off unless you've died and you can the record goes, then they clean those off. But there's no way. And so what has been tried in the past, and I think what they're doing now, is if you're on PEVL and you miss a certain number of cycles,
right? Yes.
Yeah.
Then you would be dropped. But you're not prohibited if you're dropped and you didn't want to be dropped. First of all, there would be a postcard that would go out to say, you haven't voted. If we don't hear from you in the next 30 days, we're going to remove you from Pevel. And then notify them if you are removed from Pevel and you don't want to be, all you have to do is sign up again. It's that simple. And yet you hear the left side of the ideological spectrum yelling and screaming that somehow that's voter suppression.
Well, for some reason, the colleagues on the other side think that they're incapable of going down to a place to sign up to vote or to go in. I mean, you have to have ID for just about anything you do.
Except voting.
Except voting.
And that's by design, believe me.
Well, same-day voting, you still have to have ID.
Well, in Arizona.
In Arizona. But outside, but you don't have to have it if you do early ballot.
But do they really don't
And
think
you don't
the
need it
people
if
are
you-
smart
if you're
enough
voting
to
on
get in a
federal
car or
issues?
to go
That's correct.
to go somewhere and get proper ID? I mean, really?
It has nothing to do with that. What happens is this really is a mindset that we need to reduce the barriers, because that allows more people to vote that probably shouldn't be voting. Mm-hmm. Now, we've always had fraud. I mean, fraud has existed from the dawn of time. We know there's been fraud in elections. We don't know how many. We don't, up to this point, I'm not sure that there's been enough fraud, at least provable fraud, that it's switched to any kind of an outcome. And even in this one, everything was basically anecdotal. Liz Harris has done a great job with her group.
Yes, she has.
But at this point, it's still considered anecdotal because it hasn't gone through the court system.
Yes.
It hasn't been proved per se. There hasn't been a ruling. There's no been overturning of the election. But we know that there's fraud. Now think about it. The tougher you make it to vote, meaning the more secure you make it, I shouldn't say tougher because it's not tougher, but the more secure, meaning you have to show an ID. You have to prove that you're a citizen in the case of federal elections, which they don't have to do now. As you make the voting system more secure, you make it more difficult for people who have a nefarious intent to actually engage in the election system if they're not qualified to vote in our elections. So what those that are opposed to all of this is they want to bring everybody in because they believe the people who are going to come in are going to vote for their side.
Well, they want to lower the age to vote as well.
Correct.
Let me throw a couple of examples out here of some things that could have happened. And please, they don't necessarily mean that they did happen. But there's some rarely strange things have happened, and that's adjudication. Okay? What adjudication is your ballot comes in, and it's kind of a mess. And you say for a particular office, you voted twice, and then you scribbled through one, and another one you've kind of started to vote, and then you thought twice about it, but you got a mark in the bubble, and so forth. So now the machines will not accurately, and it might even spit the thing out, especially if it's an overvote, where you voted for, you're supposed to vote for one, and you voted for two, and it spits that out. Now this piece of paper then goes to adjudication group, okay? And
A physical person
that tries to determine what your vote
your
was.
intent.
Was
What
to
your
be.
intent was.
Right.
Now, are they going to be correct in that? I mean, I'm of the opinion that for that particular office, you just leave it. You don't even guess. You know, if say for president you voted for one, you made a complete, full enclosure with the pen, and the other one you just put maybe like a check mark. What did you mean? You don't vote that. You don't try to guess if that comes to me. Do I say, well, it's obviously my candidate that he was talking about.
Right.
So then I'm making the decision rather than the voter making the decision. So that's one of the things. I think we'll find that in this particular election, at least in many voting places, and I don't know if this holds true for other, but I'm willing to say that we had an above average adjudication rate. I don't know that
not
as a
only
fact,
that,
but I think that's going to be found.
Not only that, but we hear the stories about the green button, where you put your thing in and it didn't go through. Oh, just push the green button, which we believe went directly to adjudication. But they were handing out the Sharpies and Sharpie Gate. that right there just
Those might go to
raises
adjudication.
so many flags that an audit would be so appropriate. And Senator, why is I have not seen one Democrat come to the table and say yes. I mean, from the legislature, say yes. You know what? Let's just double check everything. Let's make sure that this goes well. Now, we had John Roberts Brakey on. Now he's very much a progressive, and he says yes, absolutely.
Progressive Democrat.
I
This
just
is
don't
not
see
a
anybody
political
else.
issue. This is an American issue and an
But
Arizona
at the
issue.
legislature, at the level of being at the legislature in the state of Arizona, at that level, you're not only there for yourself, you're there for your constituents. And I would think that there'd be a large number of people to just say, hey, let's just double check. Tell your congressperson, tell your senator, go in there and double check it. But I haven't seen anybody stand up. Have you?
No, not on the Democrat side. It's pretty clear. When you talk about somebody like Mr. Brakey, he was engaged in this before this election. He showed his true colors beforehand, and he's been consistent, and I respect that. There are a lot of people that are.
He's a good man.
He is a good man. He and I are probably diametrically opposed philosophically on
Political issues.
On political issues, yes. But but he's been engaged, and he engaged at the beginning for the right reason. Now, there are a lot of Democrat colleagues that I have respect for as people. But the truth of the matter is, politically, they got a big win. The Senate and the House are controlled, meaning at Congress. The Senate and the House are controlled by Democrats. The presidency went to a Democrat. They're controlling it, and I fully believe they don't want that to change.
And they're happy about that.
And they're happy about that.
And they may be scared that it could change.
I don't think they're afraid that it's going to flip the election. I do think that they're afraid that what it may do is give fodder to the legislature to start putting more protections in for security in our election process that I was just talking about. And that's what they don't want.
Well,
I think it's less about the president being flipped. It's more about future legislation that's going to make it more difficult for illegals to vote, et cetera.
But don't they have out right now that they want to federalize the election process? Isn't that right now in Congress?
There's some discussion about that, but they would have to change. They would have to change the Constitution.
Yeah, I was going
Well,
to say
yeah,
that.
well,
the Constitution.
well,
The Constitution leaves
Yeah,
that definitely
legally,
to the
legally
states.
they'd have to change that, but there's a lot of stuff that they're doing that changes the Constitution.
Let me present
anyway.
one other thing, and then
that's
we'll
true.
go to break because we have other guests that we have to get on. And we're going to have a powerhouse team here. We're going to have Alexander Kolodin, who is an attorney, an election attorney, and he has done a fantastic job. We're going to have him in just a few minutes. So, but let me just present this. You know, we've all seen how after certain hours, I don't know exactly what time, 2 to 4 a.m., that major amounts of votes came in, and the majority of them were for one candidate, as opposed to the numbers that normally would split closer to 50-50, but they were like 80-20 or even
But
higher.
consistent in what, 5, 6, 7 states?
Right.
The
So
exactly
let's just
the same.
assume this. At 6 or 7 o'clock, okay, that's usually the cutoff for voting, at least in the United States. Now you know who hasn't voted. Because you voted, I voted, and they know we voted, and we know we voted. But there's all these other people that didn't vote. Now, here we go. We start putting ballots in for people because we have to know whether the people signed for these ballots, whether there was a chain of custody, or whether they were just put in massive groups after the election closed for people that did not vote. This is another reality that needs to be checked, because that very well could have happened. And when you see the amounts of votes in some of the states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, especially Pennsylvania, did they? And we already there was a truck driver that said he was bringing in marked ballots from New York.
Yeah.
So, there's some question about that. I think we'll take that up with Alexander Kolodin on the next side.
After this break, right?
After this break. Yeah. And we appreciate you coming here. and being here tonight. I know we're talking about some pretty heady issues, but these are important because we the people, that's the way our declaration starts out, and this is our country. Our political people are our servants, and Eddie is a good example of that. He knows that.
And they're accountable to us.
And they're accountable to the people. And they are to do the people's work. And we've seen the Board of Supervisors that has just totally closed the door on that. Okay, so we're going to see you on the other side. Do not go away because we're going to have Alexander Kolodin, and then afterwards after Alexander, we're going to do something really, really exciting. It's We the People Alliance is going to be here, the leadership of that organization.
Yeah, right here in Arizona.
Right here.
Yeah.
See you on the other side. Do not go away.
In a world where security matters more than ever, Lionheart Security Services stands head and shoulders above the competition. Whether it's airport security, high-rise residential and office security, event security, warehouse security, or even personal security, call the best of the best. Lionheart Security Services. We provide armed and unarmed officers. Our armed officers are held to the strictest standards of 90% accuracy, 20% higher than Arizona standards. When it comes to securing you, your goods, and services. Call Lionheart Security Services, 480-485-2304, or find them on the web at lionheartsecurityservices.com.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back. It is Ray Michaels from Street Talk. We are here on Trump Fridays, and I have our very, very special guest. Now, you come out here to El Capo, it's got some amazing food, but it all happens because of this man right here. This is James. He is the owner here. James, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Well, James, I'll tell you what, everybody loves coming here, and your pizza is spectacular.
Oh, thank you very much. It's very nice to hear.
Well, I'll tell you, is it a special recipe? I got to know.
Yes, it is a special recipe. You know, everyone says water is the big deal why you can't get good New York-style pizza in Arizona. So we actually have a secret ingredient where we use beer. My family actually owns a State 48 brewery, so I actually use their beer in our dough recipe.
Well, that works out pretty good. So you have a whole family in the restaurant industry.
Yes, I do.
Well, James, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget, El Capo, you got to come out. Trump Fridays happens every single Friday right here on Scottsdale Road and Shea. I'm Ray Michaels. We'll see you real soon. You are truly an amazing woman. Tell us the name of your company.
My name, it's Janet King. Well, DBA M&R Janet King. I've been doing this for 18 years, and I have 70 employees working for me. I do commercial cleaning. If you guys need any commercial cleaning.
Yeah, you're here in the Valley.
I'm here in the Valley. I work in Chandler, Tempe, Mesa, Phoenix, everywhere. And now after coronavirus and March 18, 20, I'm doing fogging and completely total disinfecting of any facility. You have an active case in your facility, call me, I'll take care of you.
So you take care of homes, it could be adult living, anything like that.
Anything that you need a total disinfecting. I have the equipment, I have the people, and whatever you need. Let's kill this virus.
All right, so what's the website?
It's marthayamas.com. Go to my website, and then you'll see everything I do and, you know, everything about me.
All right, spell out your last name for all of our viewing audience.
I start with my name, MarthaLlamas.com. That's where you go.
And how do they reach you by telephone?
My phone number is 480-577-9574.
You're listening to Fighting Back, News Talk, current events, and political commentary. Now here's the host of Fighting Back, Uncle Ronnie.
And here we are, and welcome back. Wow, we got a wide screen here now. We've got Alexander Kolodin, and he is the Republican Party attorney. And welcome to the show. And of course, we have Senator Eddie Farnsworth, Mr. Ray Michaels,
And that's difficult
Mike
for you.
Ray. Any rate, welcome back to the show. Can you pull up a little closer here so we can get you in here? This guy grows a beard about every 30 seconds, I think. I've seen him after he's shaved, and he looks like...
I get my 5 o'clock shadow at 2 o'clock.
There you go. Well, at any rate, what we've been talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is the simple fact that the Maricopa County judicial, one of the judges, Thomason, I believe is his name, and he has been kind enough to finally agree that the Arizona State Senate has supremacy over the election. That's a good thing. And we've got a lot of things that we've discussed during the last hour, especially we've certified that this machine adds up properly. Isn't that interesting?
Oh, right. Very nice.
So we did a complete audit of the machine, and it does work.
We even opened it up.
Yeah, we've done a forensic audit on that little calculator. So, at any rate, we've talked a little bit about that. I want to talk about that. I would also like to talk to you about. There's been a couple of cases just recently with the United States Supreme Court. That one that was the Arizona GOP won, and then today I saw that the Powell case was also dropped without comment by the Supreme Court. So let's start in, first of all, with what's going on in Maricopa County. And from your perspective, Alexander, I think we got a win there. Still a long way to go, but this looks promising.
It looks promising. You know, when the language of the ruling came out, I was a little bit concerned that the county would continue to drag its feet, because the court still made it clear that it's up to the legislature to actually enforce the ruling, and the court's not going to do it for the legislature. But so far, it seems as if that won't be the case. Of course, the county has a history of backtracking on promises like that, so keep our fingers crossed until everything's safely in the Senate's possession.
Yeah, now, you and I talked a little bit about that, and I was of the opinion that perhaps this time we didn't need a Senate vote if they balk at this, but you had indicated me other than that. Could you explain that?
Well, sure. So what the court did is essentially issue what's called an advisory opinion, and advisory opinions are fairly rare. Because courts typically will only adjudicate cases that are sort of live and in controversy. But everybody seemed to agree, all the parties seemed to agree, you know, it would be very helpful for us if the court would explain whether it is indeed legal for the legislature to comply with it, or sorry, for the county to comply with this audit and give the Senate the materials that they've subpoenaed. So the court, in its advisory opinion, says, you know, we've examined the legal arguments of each side, and the court's legal opinion is that it's perfectly kosher to comply with this subpoena. However, you know, the court's not going to enforce that ruling, right? We're just telling everybody what the law is.
Okay, so what's your best guess? Are they going to actually turn this over? Are they backtracking? I know they've made a few comments today. We discussed that with Senator Farnsworth and questioning, you know, why they haven't just come out with a mea culpa and said, okay, we were wrong, let's move forward. But are they going to fight this?
Well, what happened last time around is the Senate and the county were close to a deal because, of course, the county had temporarily succeeded in pulling the wool over the Senate's eyes and convincing them that there is such a thing as an Elections Assistance Commission certified auditor. When it was revealed that no such thing exists, of course, the Senate then decided they were going to use real forensic auditors, and that's when the county backtracked. So I wonder if the Senate, you know, selects another real auditor, if that ever got to the county, whether they would backtrack again. I think that bears watching.
Well, we pretty much determined, and a good friend of mine used the term sham audit. You know him well. And we kind of felt that this might have been a sham audit. If you want to know who that was, this was my friend right here. He's the one who coined the sham audit.
So, Alex, in your professional opinion, at what point does the court, let's just say that they do the whole thing that they've done in the past, which we think may happen again, At what point does the court just say, you know what, enough is enough. You're wasting the court's time. This is my ruling. I've given it to you. We've said it to you 3 different ways. Now, and they start putting some pressure on them from a court standpoint.
Well, I think the Senate would probably have to go back to court and actually bring an enforcement action if they wanted the court to do it. But look, the courts are really, really reluctant to do what they see as the Senate's dirty work for them, right? The court wants the Senate to shoot its own dog, so to speak. Whether if the enforcement was specifically brought before them again now that they've issued this advisory opinion, whether the court would indeed enforce, that's anybody's guess. But I think the pressure should be kept up on the Senate, and especially Senator Boyer, to say, look, you were questioning the legality. Now the legality is crystal clear. Now they're defined what is inarguably a legal order. Do we get contempt now?
So, Senator Farnsworth, do you believe that the Senate as a whole has the fortitude to go ahead and to really put their foot down this time, hearing from the court? Are they in a position to really do something and maybe make some arrests if that is what comes to it?
I think the weak link there is Paul Boyer, Senator Paul Boyer. He's the one that voted against it. So all 16 of for those who don't know, the Senate is split right now 16-14, 16 Republicans, 14 Democrats. So it takes every single Republican in the Senate to vote for something to get it to pass. All 16 had signed a paper saying that they would support a declaration of contempt, which is what is required by state statute before the Senate president is empowered to then use that enforcement mechanism. And I will clarify in just a second. So that's really the question, because Paul Boyer, after he signed that, decided on the floor that he wasn't going to vote for it, and so it died in a split 15-15. So the declaration never happened. Now, what I do think is that this would be much more difficult to vote against, because you have a court that has come out with this opinion. So I think it would be very tough. I know he got a lot of backlash. I do think the Senate has the fortitude, with possibly the exception of Paul Boyer. I do want to, and Alex, I want to ask you if you see it this way. I believe part of the problem that the county has, if they were to backtrack at this point, is much different than what they had before when they backtracked. There was no judgment, no ruling, no opinion by the court, and so it was still up in the air really what existed or how the court felt. But the court did not rule in favor of the county on a single issue. And so the county has a real difficult time now trying to justify having such a lopsided opinion given against them, to now backtrack and say, wait a minute, we don't believe that Judge Thomason really knew what he was doing. We're going to do what we want, and believe that they're going to win in any kind of an action that occurs. Do you see it that way?
So not entirely, only because I am a guy who's been litigated against the county for the better part of a year now, and I have seen them switch positions so many times at this point, and switch justifications so many times at this point. To see them doing it again would not be surprising. If I imagine that there's a distinct possibility that the next thing out of their mouth is, well, the court talked about the legality, but there's also a political question here, which is, whether the Senate really wants this, right? And if they do, they'll enforce their subpoena. And if they don't, we don't have to comply, right? You could easily see them making that argument at this point. I hope they don't. I hope you're right. I hope I'm wrong. But
well, yeah. We found somebody who's more skeptical of the county than I am. That's remarkable.
I hate those guys.
But the other thing is, Alex, that the court continues to talk about the legislative authority and the enforcement mechanism.
Sure.
But the Senate does not have the same breadth of enforcement that the courts do. Basically, there's no way to compel, under the current statutes, there's no way to compel somebody directly to give up these documents or information. What the statute allows is for the president, after a declaration of contempt by the Senate, which we just talked about failed, but even if that passed, the Senate president would be empowered to send the sergeant at arms, and I assume some of the Capitol Police, to go out and arrest people. but they don't have the authority to go out and start taking into custody ballots, et cetera.
Right. So this is the way that civil contempt works, right? The distinction between civil contempt, which is what you're talking about, the Senate president doing, and criminal contempt, is that in civil contempt, the person who is arrested and imprisoned for contempt holds the keys to their freedom in their own pocket, right? And so the actual way that the compulsion works is you have now been arrested by the Senate for failing to comply with a subpoena. You will stay in jail or stay in custody until such time as the county complies. So in theory, they could just sit in jail forever and then comply, but I don't think they're going to do that, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's that. But the point is that the courts continue to talk about the Senate having its own remedy, and it does, but it's not as broad and it's not as forceful as having a remedy through the court. Now, I'm not suggesting that the Senate shouldn't enforce it. I think they should. I've been a strong advocate for that. But I don't think it's not apples and oranges when you're talking about civil contempt versus criminal contempt. And yet the court continues to say, we don't want to get involved because the Senate can do it themselves. Well, they can hopefully get there, but they can't send the marshals out to gather up all the information so that they can audit.
Well, I want to add one thing on that point, right, is as conservatives, we always say we play by the Marquis of Queensberry rules, and our opponents tend not to do so, right? Look, if the court has demonstrated one thing, it's that it is extremely reluctant to second guess the political branches of government, right? If Senator Fan were to tell the Sergeant at Arms, we have this contempt vote, go seize the machines, it's hard for me to imagine that a court would second guess that decision or her interpretation of what the contempt power allows. And I would hope that the legislature would realize that it's high time to use the court's deference to their own interpretation of their own rules to their advantage instead of letting that deference be used against it.
And I think that's fair. I agree with that.
You know, we just witnessed something that happened with the John Brakey case with the Libertarians, and that is where they had their hearing, and the county attorneys were at least 15 to 20 minutes late, and then once they got there, they apologized that they didn't know they had a hearing that day, and the judge did not reprimand them. I found that, if that had been you as a private attorney, I'm sure you would have been severely reprimanded.
It's quite.
So you didn't even want to think about that one.
Yeah. I remember the one time that ever happened. One of my cases, it was a private case, and opposing counsel, failed to show up. He didn't know it was the same day. So the judge turns to me and he goes, "Well, counselor, should I sanction opposing counsel for this?" Asking me the question. I'm like, "Hey, look, it's a small legal community. I'm gonna go to the judge. Judge, we all make mistakes. We're not asking for a sanction." The judge turns to opposing counsel and goes, "I'm going to sanction you anyway."
At any rate, I was kind of surprised that I don't think the judge even said anything other than grant them more time, because he said we weren't ready, and the Libertarians attorney said, "Well, how about having a response to tomorrow?" And the judge said, "Well, that's not enough time." They'd already had a week's notice, and they had it on 5 counts from you guys, from the Republican Party, 5 from the Libertarian Party. They had 10 notices, service, and they forgot. They didn't know it was happening.
Now, Alex, as the AZGOP attorney, you were a friend of the court on that case as well.
Yes.
Can you give us some updates on that?
So the last week, the court granted us leave to file our amicus brief in the Libertarian Party case you're talking about. Yeah, and is going to consider it. So we'll see what impact that has on their judgment.
When's the next hearing on that?
It's this week.
This week.
Sorry. Actually, I'm not sure. I'd have to look at my calendar.
Okay.
So.
At any rate, isn't it true that they already completed this audit and did not allow the Republicans, the Libertarians, or the Democrats, and instead chose the League of Women Voters? Come on.
Right. Well, that was certainly the argument we advanced in our brief is, they said, well, because of COVID, we've got space restrictions. And of course, the AZGOP's point was, well, we know you got space for 14 people because you had invited 14 people to come, but the statute actually doesn't require you to have 14 people there. The statute requires you to have one observer from each party there. So if it's a space constraint, bump somebody else because the statute doesn't let you bump us.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, with a political-centric system here, I found it rather strange that they would select the League of Women Voters rather than the political parties. Isn't that rather strange?
It's extremely strange. What it is, as we pointed out to the court, is another instance where the county is trying to select their own judges, right? Yeah. They try to select their own judges, saying, oh, we don't like the Senate's auditor, so we're not giving you the ballots. We're going to have our hand-picked auditors to do the audit to judge us, right? And that's not enough for them. Then they say, well, and we want our hand-picked observers to observe our hand-picked auditors to judge us. Because they know the Arizona Republic's not going to question it. That's what they know.
Right.
Oh, boy. Listen, let's shift gears a little bit. Where there's a couple of cases. Of course, the GOP case was dismissed from the federal courts, Supreme Court. Today, your former client or boss or the Kraken, Sidney Powell's case was dismissed without comment, I might add.
Yes, that's right.
And what's that about, without comment?
Well, that's actually a common way of denying petitions for review, or in our case, an emergency petition. It's actually not that strange. As Justice Thomas had put it with respect to some prior denials, however, this continued silence from the Supreme Court is itself now having the impact of undermining public confidence in the election. The refusal to weigh in and establish the law once and for all is actually starting to impair the judicial system's ability to bolster public confidence in and the legitimacy of the entire system.
And also their argument of there's no standing.
Ridiculous.
Maybe you can go into a little bit of that. I don't know how they can justify that a state versus a state and they don't have standing.
Right. And I think two members of the Supreme Court pointed out that under the Constitution, this is actually mandatory standing. So in a lot of situations, even if they're standing, not standing, Supreme Court gets to pick what cases it's going to review. But with respect to state versus state, at least it's the opinion of a few judges.
Last resort, isn't it?
That's the court of first instance in state versus state. Right. And under the Constitution, my opinion is, it's shared by two justices, they not only have standing, but the Supreme Court has to hear that case.
That would appear correct.
They didn't do it.
I mean, what other court can?
No other court can.
The Texas court or
so
the Pennsylvania court. It has to be the
I know both Senator,
party.
you and Alex are both attorneys, and from my understanding of the Constitution is that you stay as a Supreme Court judge for good behavior. It's not a lifetime appointment. It actually says for good behavior.
I believe they can be impeached.
Could the Congress say this? You did not follow the Constitution. This is bad behavior. You will be removed. You will be removed, and just bring in some other people. I think that's possible.
Well, I guess it's
probable, maybe not, but possible.
You're in the realm of technical possibility.
It's theoretical, but it's never
I don't
going
see
to happen.
it happening.
But the answer is yes. I mean, the Congress has given up all kinds of authority that it has, as has the legislature.
Yes, absolutely.
No, I believe there's still two more cases to be adjudicated, and I believe the opinions are going to come out tomorrow, I believe. One of them, and you can help me, gentlemen, if you would, one of them is about ballot harvesting. Where are we at on that? I believe that's going to come out tomorrow, the decision. What's your thoughts?
I guess that's a really broad question. You're talking about Berdovich, for the Berdovich case, right? Yeah. Look, I mean, I went to an interesting talk maybe 2 years ago by a law professor at the University of San Diego, brought a bunch of conservative lawyers from all over the country to talk about the EEOC, right, and the EEOC regulations on private business. And her sort of general thesis that she was developing, which I thought was very poignant and applicable to this case, is she said, there is no hiring principle that a company can apply that is in any way related to the ability to do the job that does not also have a disparate impact on some group or other, right? Even if a company were to say, we only want right-handed people, you're now discriminating against Asian Americans who have slightly higher propensity to be left-handed, right? The standard that Brnovich is trying to avoid having applied to states' election integrity legislation, right, is that EEOC standard where everything it has some sort of disparate impact, and therefore all election integrity legislation is therefore illegal. I think on the law, it's a very solid argument. Obviously, when you get up, especially when you get up to the level of the Supreme Court, the question of the judge's politics does come into play.
Interesting.
Then there should be another case. Did you have a comment on that? I mean, Arizona has a law now. I don't believe it's being enforced against ballot harvesting. Is that correct?
We did. We've tightened up the ballot harvesting, and we put some limitations on it. I can't say it hasn't been enforced. I don't know that it's been violated, so
Well,
I'm not sure.
Some of us, Neil and myself and Mr. O'Connor, saw it violated.
Yeah.
We photographed it.
And were you arrested when you?
Wasn't me.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think we have a break coming up too, Uncle Ronnie.
Oh, wow. Well, there's one other thing here that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
There's I believe there's another case before the Supreme Court tomorrow, and that is, I believe it's voting in your precinct. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with that one.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. I think we have two cases.
So what is that case? Can you go into a little bit more detail?
Essentially what it says is you have to vote in your precinct, and there are very few exceptions to that where you could early vote.
As opposed to voting centers like we've had.
Yes, no voting centers.
that's
You must vote in no emergency voting centers as well, and you have to vote where you're registered.
Well, I specifically liked what President Trump said at CPAC.
I do too.
Where he said there should be a day of voting, not a week of voting, not a month of voting, not
Or a
45
season.
days or a season. It's a day of voting. So that's what I like.
And we've discussed that with John Brakey too.
Right.
And he's even to the point where it should be a holiday. Everybody has a day off so that you're in fact can't say, well, I didn't have the opportunity. I mean, the way the law reads now, I mean, you get 2 hours off with pay if you,
right.
And I find it really difficult to believe that in a day you can't, especially with 2 hours off.
Especially if it's I mean, there were so many opportunities to vote at centers. I prefer precinct voting because you know the people there.
Yes.
They know you. They've seen it. They're the neighbors. You go to the same stores
and you're not
together.
about to put something over on many of these people. I mean,
Right,
you
and
can't
if you
walk in
walk-
and say, I'm Joe Blow, not Joe Smith.
Right, and if you walk in with a stack of 50 ballots, they're going to look at you and say, why do you have 50 ballots there?
Right.
You know? It's accountability.
Right, and we know beyond a shadow of a doubt. I think you'll both agree. The best government, the most responsive government, is the one that's closest to the people. Is the best government you can have.
Yeah.
I would agree with that if the government is honest and functioning. if it's not, it actually can be it can be the most tyrannical government.
Isn't that an oxymoron?
It's becoming an oxymoron.
Yeah.
But if you have a government that is acting within the confines of the Constitution and acting within the confines of the best interest of the people, the local government is the best. But it can be the most tyrannical.
Yeah,
Like
that's why
you
limited
must wear
power.
a mask and you must close the schools.
Limited powers.
That kind of tyranny.
Well, and one of the reasons why is because there's less limitation at the state level than there is at the federal level. If you look at the federal Constitution, it is one of enumerated powers. Now, we don't follow that, but we're supposed to. And if we did, we wouldn't have probably 70% of the federal government that exists today. And at the state level, it is a much broader and open question as to what the states can do legitimately. It's certainly broader than the federal
Yes,
government.
absolutely.
And so that's where they can actually get in legally and legitimately. They can come in and regulate far greater than the federal government can legally.
Right. Any other questions that we have? Because we've got to move on. We're going to have to go to a break. We've got some people from the We the People Alliance, and this is really going to be exciting because we're going to be talking about recall. And a lot of us have heard about that. We don't know what, some people don't know what it is.
It was a movie with
how it works.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Total Recall.
Total Recall.
Yeah.
Mr. O'Connor made a graphic of that, as a matter of fact, went out. So, any rate, let's shift gears here, and Mr. O'Connor will take us out, and Senator Farnsworth and Alex, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so
having
much.
me.
Always a
Thanks for having
pleasure.
us.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
It's always exciting. These guys are rock stars. Whenever we have them on, we get lots and lots of views, and so that's no exception. So, any rate, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back with our next guests. And so, don't you dare go away, because we've got a bodybuilder here in the building, and he's it looks like he could floor slam any one of us. So we'll see you on the other side. Don't go away.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back. It is Ray Michaels from Street Talk. We are here on Trump Fridays, and I have our very, very special guest. Now, you come out here to El Capo. It's got some amazing food, but it all happens because of this man right here. This is James. He is the owner here. James, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Well, James, I'll tell you what, everybody loves coming here, and your pizza is spectacular.
Oh, thank you very much. It's very nice to hear.
Well, I'll tell you, is it a special recipe? I got to know.
Yes, it is a special recipe. Everyone says water is the big deal why you can't get good New York-style pizza in Arizona. So we actually have a secret ingredient where we use beer. My family actually owns a State 48 brewery, so I actually use their beer in our dough recipe.
Well, that works out pretty good. So you have a whole family in the restaurant industry.
Yes, I do.
Well, James, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget, El Capo, you got to come out. Trump Fridays happens every single Friday right here on Scottsdale Road and Shea. I'm Ray Michaels. We'll see you real soon.
In a world where security matters more than ever, Lionheart Security Services stands head and shoulders above the competition. Whether it's airport security, high-rise residential and office security, event security, warehouse security, or even personal security, call the best of the best. Lionheart Security Services. We provide armed and unarmed officers. Our armed officers are held to the strictest standards of 90% accuracy, 20% higher than Arizona standards. When it comes to securing you, your goods, and services. Call Lionheart Security Services, 480-485-2304, or find them on the web at lionheartsecurityservices.com.
You are truly an amazing woman. Tell us the name of your company.
It's Janet King. Well, DBA M&R Janet King. I've been doing this for 18 years, and I have 70 employees working for me. I do commercial cleaning. If you guys need any commercial cleaning.
Yeah, you're here in the Valley.
I'm here in the Valley. I work in Chandler, Tempe, Mesa, Phoenix, everywhere. And now after coronavirus and March 18, 20, I'm doing fogging and completely total disinfecting of any facility, you have an active case in your facility, call me, I'll take care of you.
So you take care of homes, it could be adult living, anything like that.
Anything that you need a total disinfecting. I have the equipment, I have the people, and whatever you need. Let's kill this virus.
All right, so what's the website?
It's marthallamas.com. Go to my website, and then you'll see everything I do and, everything about me.
All right, spell out your last name for all of our viewing audience.
I start with my name, martha.lamas.com. That's where you go.
And how do they reach you by telephone?
My phone number is 480-577-9574.
You're listening to Fighting Back, news talk, current events, and political commentary. Now here's the host of Fighting Back, Uncle Ronnie.
Well, welcome back. We have another exciting portion of the show tonight. It's been really a great time, Ray.
Yes.
And tonight we have the lovely Shelby Busch and her fiance. I think that's how you say male fiance, isn't it? And that would be Steve Robinson. Welcome to the show. They are with the I want to just use the Arizona up first. We the People Arizona Alliance. And hey guys, tell us a lot about that. A lot of people have heard of it, but they don't know what it is.
So we are a grassroots, people-driven political action committee. And the whole reason and purpose for what we did and where we launched out was to recall the Board of Supervisors.
It's a good move.
Yeah. I mean, we'd been out doing the investigations. We saw the evidence. The courts weren't having it. The Board of Supervisors felt like they had a perfect election. They lied to our face. We were there in 2018. We all saw what went down in 2018.
That was
right?
just a trial run, I think.
Oh, yeah. And they threw everything at it but the kitchen sink just to make sure it happened. So we went to the Board of Supervisors in 18, and they assured us that they were appalled. They stood right with us, and they said, oh, this is horrible. I can't believe this happened. So we're going to do better in 2020. Their idea of doing better, hire a bureaucrat. That was their idea.
That's what they did.
Right.
That's what they did. Steve, how did you get involved with this? I mean, same. I know you guys are kind of.
They were carpooling.
Yeah,
carpooling.
we're inseparable. So
insufferable.
Inseparable.
Oh, okay.
Now, Shelby, I think you're being very, very modest because you have put together an amazing group of people, all volunteers. You've put on some pretty incredible events, and you've got national coverage with a lot of the people that you work with. So tell us a little bit about from that founding to what's happening today.
Okay, so foundational, we were frustrated, we were angry, we were trying to figure out what our next move was. We prayed about it, and there were 5 or 6 misfits sitting on our front porch just hanging out. We said, what are we going to do? Recall the Board of Supervisors. Within 72 hours, we filed the petitions, we set up the PAC, and we scheduled an event that was broadcast by Right Side Media, and within a week, we had several thousand volunteers step up to the plate to really come behind what we were doing. We had no idea where it was going to go, but incredible people. People, they're hungry. They're hungry. They feel abandoned by our party, but they're like me. They're true blue Republicans. They believe in the principles. They believe in what the Republican Party stands for, and this is our home. And if somebody comes into your home that doesn't belong there, you stand and fight.
That's right.
And so we're fighting for our party, but they needed a place to do that. And I feel like we've provided that to them and given them a place where they can fight for what they believe is theirs. And it's really has gone on like fire, but I can't say that it's Steve or myself that's doing it. I give most of the credit is all to God, because I really believe God wanted this. He wanted his people to come together and to feel
amen.
empowered. And so, it's been a whirlwind. 5 a.m. text message from Steve Bannon, right? That was cool. And then Linwood.
Oh, you
coming
even
out.
appeared on his show.
Yeah.
All right.
War
So
Room.
tell us some of the other key people here that we would know their names in Arizona. We got Josh Barnett right over here, ran for Congress. We
Hi,
have
Josh.
Eric Winook, who also ran for Congress many years ago, but he's kind of a pillar here.
And he's here frequently.
He is
He's,
here frequently.
One of the guest hosts.
No, I think you said ghost host.
Ghost host.
which I think is
Yeah.
right. So a lot of events that you have, and you know what? The people in your organization have these massive hearts. They just really, truly love what they're doing, and it's God-centered because they realize that our country was founded on godly principles, and that we need to go back to that to make sure that we grab the liberty and freedom that we
Our
do.
our volunteer base needs a lot of credit. They are hardworking. This is a major labor of love. Everyone, their hearts are fully into it, and they're invested into this, and we're all volunteers in this movement, and so we're pressing forward. But our volunteers are some of the greatest.
Now,
Thank
Steve,
you.
from having people in your front yard, just kind of hanging out, probably having a couple beers and just shooting the breeze, to the event that you had that was covered by Right Side Broadcasting, to the event that was just, a couple weeks ago, where that small movement of recalling a few of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors has grown. Can you tell us about that event that happened just a couple weeks ago?
Okay, so the additional recalls were basically We the People AZ Alliance was formed to be something that belongs to the people, and that's what we intended. So our organization is a tool that's available to the voter base, and if enough people in an area or a district decide that they have a politician that is corrupt, and they give us the evidence of that, and we decide that we agree with them, then we will help them. We will file on their behalf, and then they put the teams together. We help them provide everything that they need, so that they can make it happen.
Now, we actually have the petitions here, right here at Hub Radio.
Yes. 3238 East Bell Road.
East Bell. So if you want to
And we have them all for all 5 districts.
So it originally started out with the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. Shelby, how many of the Board of Supervisors, how many of the 5 were on the original recall?
4.
4 of them. And Steve Chukri, who sat right over here during this show, he was exempt because he did vote to make things move forward. But you later found out that maybe something was different than was being portrayed.
Well, sometimes people do things because they just want to cover their behind. Right now, the Board of Supervisors, they're not real popular guys. So it really worked to Chukri's advantage to be on our side in this situation. But what is being on our side? That's what you have to ask yourself.
Well, working for we the people.
Exactly. His statement this morning doesn't show that he's working for the people. He feels like that circus that they called an audit was an audit, and everything is fine. So you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth and expect people to trust you. The time for that is over. We see right through it.
We had asked him to come back on the show and actually discuss this matter and why the 4 of them felt one way and he felt another. And we had asked him particularly to let it all out, tell the public why the board is doing this, and he would have to break with the board, obviously, and they would not be happy with him. And this is not about happiness of a public servant. This is the happiness of the citizens, we the people, as you say. And the other thing, and I know you're involved, I've been involved, I've been a member of the board of the Arizona State Republican Party. I know you're an officer in the party as well. But it troubles me a great deal when I see a political party that just does not seem to have the fortitude to go after these things. And we have to set up organizations outside of the political arena. People are looking for somebody that's tough, and that's why we love Donald Trump, is he's tough and he doesn't let us down. He says what we think, and he goes for it. And you guys are following right in those steps. I love your organization.
So a couple weeks ago, tell us what happened. We're at this big event. You had it in Glendale, and you had some speakers there that had some pretty big news. Can you go over that with us?
Oh, yes. Sorry. I was going to try to get there, but I got into explaining
Oh,
the
we get
organization.
diverted a lot.
He gave you a great opening.
Yeah, so we had two Farnsworths with us, Verl
Not
and
counting
David.
the one we just
Not
had
counting
here.
the one that we just had here.
Yeah.
So two other Farnsworths, and we had a few other people, Walt Blackman, but Verl Farnsworth was the one who wanted to make the announcement that we're also recalling Doug Ducey.
So the governor,
that's the big one.
Yeah,
the governor, and honestly, we weren't sure if we should do that, but we've gotten so much requests for it. Every single volunteer on a daily basis is hearing, "Where's a Doug Ducey petition? I want to sign to get Doug Ducey out." So eventually, it became, it's obvious enough people want to get rid of Doug Ducey. Let's just go ahead and file on him too.
and it didn't stop there.
No, it didn't. Go ahead, Shelby. Who else did we file on there?
Katie Hobbs.
Yes.
Secretary of State.
Oh, the one that thinks everybody that's a Trump supporter is a Nazi? That Katie Hobbs?
Yes.
You're not a Nazi?
I'm not a Nazi, never have been.
All right, and
News break.
and another one as well,
Kathy Hoffman,
who is Superintendent of Public Instruction.
correct. And Steve Chukri. So we added him to the mix.
So all 5 now of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, and then there was another one that kind of squeaked in at the end. It's like they were running a race, and he just came from behind, and he just ran right over, and he wanted that ribbon. Can you tell us who that was and why?
Paul Boyer.
Paul Boyer.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let's see if anyone
Voted
can guess
with-
why.
And why, Shelby?
I can tell
us
you why, but we won't.
Senator
we won't go there.
Paul Boyer would be on your list.
Because he won the Biggest Loser race. He
So-
betrayed the electorate. He betrayed the Senate.
But tell everyone who's viewing right now, how did he do this? How?
Sure. So the vote came down on Senate Resolution 1005, and it was to hold the Board of Supervisors in contempt for not complying with the subpoenas. And on the moment, on the floor, tension building, and it's his turn to vote as a co-sponsor of this bill.
And that's
this
the key.
resolution.
He did indicate to the President Fan, I will support this.
Yeah.
Well, if you're the co-sponsor, you would think
Yes.
that you'd support the bill.
Yes.
And what happened?
He voted against it.
And what was his reason? It had to be a big reason.
Well, yeah, he said he believes we need to exercise more patience.
More patience.
More patience,
Yeah.
yes.
Wow. And
After
I think
3
he also
months
said,
of putting up with nonsense.
I heard that he also said, I don't really want to put my friends in jail.
Right.
Did he say that?
Yeah, and I think he said something about spirit of cooperation, too.
All right. So now that the judge has ruled that they have every right to do exactly what they were doing, do you think that he's going to think twice about this?
No. He just voted against cleaning up our voter rolls.
Yeah, I was going to say he did it again.
Yeah, he's officially a Democrat, and honestly, if he went ahead and left our party and joined the Democratic Party, they'd vote for him.
Well, the people in his district, you're probably aware, don't like him. They didn't like him before this.
They
This vote.
unanimously censured him.
Yes.
His
Yeah,
party.
yeah, no, his LD,
But they weren't
his
fond of him
legislative
before
district.
that either.
Yeah. So how do I know we have so many people out there and they feel the same way that you are. We're kind of fed up with people being elected, promising the moon and delivering the Swiss cheese and not really doing anything or standing on their foundations. How do people out there who are watching, how do they get involved with your organizations? You have a website.
We have a website, WeThePeopleAZAlliance.com.
Okay. And I know that it costs a lot to do what you're doing, to get out there, to file petitions, to work with the volunteers. What's the best way? If somebody's just sitting there saying, you know what, I'm fed up too, but my life is so busy, I don't have the time, but I want to participate. How can they reach into their pockets, financially support you? Do you have a GoFundMe page? Do you have a place that you can donate on your website? What's the best way? How can they get involved? Can they sign up for an email list? What can they do?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Good.
There is a PayPal link on our website. We went through 3 other ones, but they denied us. For some reason, a lot of people don't want to see election integrity. I don't know why. The establishment doesn't seem to like the idea of holding elected officials accountable.
Well, the deep
So-
state, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yes, there is a PayPal link on our website. We do have a email list. We also have a text group that you can join from the website as well.
Facebook page?
Me and Shelby have been permanently banned from Facebook.
You've been
so,
permanently
yeah.
banned. And what did you do? What was so severe that they permanently banned you? This is worse than going on your permanent record back in grade school and high school.
We helped start a peaceful rally in front of the elections department. That's what we did.
That's
and we
what you
didn't even
did.
post anything about it on Facebook.
So
But
they
Facebook banned us.
took
Yeah.
something that you did away outside of the
Yes.
Facebook model, and they banned you on Facebook because you did something outside their group.
Yes. We're not the only ones.
I've
so-
never even been in Facebook jail, but yet
Yeah,
I don't
me
even
neither.
have an appeal right.
The Facebook jail looks a little bit like the containers with the bars on it that they put the kids in at the border. Have you seen that? That's
Oh,
like
the ones where they
that's like-
take them away from
that's
their
like
parents under the Obama
That's-
administration, but blame the Trump administration.
Well, they were kids in cages during
Kids
the
in
Trump
cages.
administration.
Well, don't forget that now they're still using the same cages, but they changed the terminology of it, and it's okay because under Biden, they're being put in cages with love.
humanitarian.
Listen, if you have something that's bad and you paint a butterfly on it, it all of a sudden becomes good.
Of course.
Use some glitter, some sparkles, everything's good. All right, so We the People, azalliance.com.
Yes.
And then where else can they get you? You have an email?
We have an email, we have an office. People can stop into our office.
Oh, where's the office located?
It's 43rd Avenue in Glendale, 4225 West Glendale Avenue, and our address is on our website.
And what would they see at your office?
Aaron.
Yeah?
Yeah, Aaron, he's
and
great.
And they'd meet you?
They would meet us in the evenings. We're usually there. If we're not out doing this stuff or holding events, we're usually there always in the evenings.
And how do we find out about upcoming events that are happening? How they can get an autographed picture of Josh Barnett? How can we find out more about this?
Can sign his biceps.
Everything's on the website. We try to put everything that we can on the website. That's the only place we're not being censored.
Except for the $49.95 image of Josh with his signature.
Oh, all right.
Is
it
that
went
what it's
up.
up
It
to?
was $49.95 just last
Oh, wow.
week.
His biceps got bigger since last week. Have you seen that?
That's
No,
hauling
but,
in the
you know-
money. He's carrying all that cat.
No, it's a wonderful, wonderful group that they put together, and a lot of people are just out there. And so, have you seen a lot of things move forward since you started? I mean, you have a lot of signatures. You have people like Uncle Ronnie here having places where you can sign. I'm sure there's
Oh, yeah.
other places around the valley. Where else can they go? What other groups are you working with? Tell me what's happening on that side.
Great State Alliance has really come on board and helped us
Absolutely.
out.
Wonderful organization.
Yes,
Yeah.
there is several Christian women's groups and Republican groups that have really rallied around us, made this their kind of home project, so that's wonderful. And then we've got great district leads, and if you get a hold of us, we'll get you in contact with them, and they're setting up booths all over the place, in front of banks, parks, libraries, anywhere they can. They're setting up signing booths, pop-up tents, banners, the whole 9 yards, embracing people in, gathering their signatures. It's been phenomenal. And then last night, Mike Lindell mentioned us on CPAC. That was amazing. So we thank you. Shameless shout out to Mike Lindell.
Yeah,
Mike
great guy,
Lindell
great guy.
has put a link to our website front and center on the top of his website.
Wow.
And
That is
I do
amazing.
want to point out that we have somebody in our audience tonight who has been going door to door. Linda. Thank you, Linda. She's
Thank
been
you.
going door to door.
That's right.
And,
She's a Fuller Brush lady.
Fuller Brush lady.
No,
No,
Avon.
she's been
Avon
carrying
Cullen?
petitions around.
Shelby, you know what? I didn't know but last Saturday night, we had a chance to spend a little bit of time together. I didn't know if you knew that I would be there, but somebody, you mentioned Mike Lindell, and Steve, you were there too. Nothing happened on the side, but you were there with another couple of guests at a special event. Can we talk about it now?
Yeah.
Now that it's over?
Yeah.
Okay, because
Yes.
it was highly secretive. Steve, who was there on Saturday night at that special
One
event?
person that was there, we already previously knew because we worked with them in D.C. during the investigations. But Patrick Barron and
CEO of
Overstock.com.
Right. And he had, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you have seen, he had a whole video that he hired a crew of top experts to show exactly what happened, the anomalies,
Yep.
the things that were statistically impossible that were happening during that time where they had to shut down all the machines. If you haven't seen that, check that out as well. So he
He's
was
an
there.
amazing and generous man.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and he's tall.
Oh yeah, very tall.
Yeah, I asked him.
So
how's
was
the
the
weather
other
up there?
guest.
He's
very
got me
tall.
by at least 1 or 2 inches.
And then there was another guest too that I'm sure many of you will know. And who was that?
The Kraken Master, Sydney Powell.
Sydney Powell was
And
there.
she is one tall
And
lady.
she is very tall. It didn't
is.
help that she was wearing 3-inch heels, but still, even without them, she's very tall.
And
She
very-
taller than you as well?
With the heels on, we were eye to eye.
Wow.
And very
I
gracious.
saw a picture with
both of
Yes.
them.
with Mike or with Mr. Michaels here, and quite frankly, I thought you were.
I was standing in a hole.
Yeah, I thought you were in a hole. I mean, she's a head taller than you, and I didn't know we had dwarfs on this show.
Now,
but-
can you tell us a little bit about? Because I know you had a chance to talk with the producer director of a. There's going to be a new motion picture out, a documentary about this whole election period, and he was doing some filming here with Sydney Powell. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
There's not much we're allowed to talk about.
Okay,
And
all right.
We don't have a super big involvement in that anyway, but what we do know, we're not really supposed to talk about. So.
Okay, all right. You know, there are some things that still haven't been released, and Sydney Powell had a chance to share some of the things, some behind the scenes, but she couldn't talk about a lot of things. For everybody out there who's wondering, is this over? Is it over? What's the consensus? Shelby?
It's not over. It's not over. The spirit of the American people will prevail, and we will not give up. Arizona is going to stay on the front lines, and we are going to fight. And I'm telling you, the fraud is there, and we're going to get it.
And you've seen it firsthand.
I have seen it.
And you've worked with the people in D.C. I mean, it has been right in front of you. There's no doubt in your mind that there was mischievous things happening. We won't use the F word, because then they'll say that we can't broadcast here. There were inconsistencies. There were abnormalities. There was some mischief going on. Can you state that for the record?
There were gremlins inside the electronic voting equipment.
With water or without? Because
With.
they turn into gremlins with the water.
let's-
They
There's a whole
multiply.
gambit of things that we have actual solid evidence about, and I'll try not to mention the F word.
Well,
but
Steve,
yes,
yeah, don't mention that, because for some reason they just don't like that.
the new F word.
That's
yeah.
Yeah, it's not the F word, the 4-letter F word.
yeah. No. It's,
At any rate, let's look at this from the standpoint. Perhaps there's a breakout here with this court decision. It allows something that few states have had this opportunity to do, and we have. I don't know if you know John Brakey. We had him at your event, and even though he's a Democrat, we're all Americans.
Yeah,
we're all
absolutely.
Americans, and we have got to look after our country. Legitimacy, yes. If you sincerely lose, you can go along with it, but you can't go along with something that has been, once again, mischievous is a good word. And when we did the numbers before, and I'll tell the audience again, and you guys might have heard this. I sent it around to everybody. We had in this country 212 million people registered to vote. Okay, 66% of them did vote. That leaves about 140 million people that actually voted. That's the 66% of the 212 million. Okay. We know that Donald Trump got approximately 75 million votes. And we know, too, that Joe Biden got 80 million votes. But if you take 75 and 80, it doesn't come up to 140 million. It's much more than 140 million. So the real question is, where did those votes come from? Because there weren't that many people out there that voted. I mean, and it's a sad day when something that's that simple math and nobody buys into it in the media and in the once again and the Board of Supervisors are Republicans, but that's not the issue.
Let's just say they have an R next to their name.
Yes.
Are they Republicans? We're not sure.
Or rascals. The R stands for rascal. And I've received a lot of criticism because I'm going after Republicans. I mean, I'm sorry, when you see something that is improper and is incorrect, you should say something about it. You know, we don't allow
Absolutely.
we don't allow mischievous behavior in this country. And as you said, God, you know, someday we got to stand before the bar of God, and we have to explain ourselves. And you know, why didn't you do something about that, Uncle Ronnie? You know, so we all are in this together, and we better do the right thing.
We are, and you know, I kind of like to look at the Democrats as the annoying sibling. Like the other sibling's always the annoying one, right? But they're still my sibling. You know, comparing to we're all Americans.
Right.
That's my sibling. No one else can come in here and pick on my sibling except me, right? And we need to get back to that kind of mentality where we are a greater community. We are all Americans. Even though we disagree on politics, this is our country, and it's ours to fight amongst each other over. But we need to stop these issues with other countries and other influences and you know, the types of things that we've been saying. I'm trying to be careful to not say certain things.
No, but Steve,
You know,
you're absolutely
censorship
right.
is getting difficult to deal with.
You're 100% right. You know, they want to divide us in every way.
Yeah.
Our motto is e pluribus unum, out of many one. It didn't say by the color of your skin, by your gender, by your ethnic origin, by your height, by your monetary income.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with that. You're absolutely right. You hit it right on the nail. And we as Americans need to come together, and we truly need to care about each other, whether we agree or not.
Absolutely.
That's not the point of whether we agree, and most likely we're going to disagree. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different upbringings. We all have different family and friends. So we need to come together, and everything that they do that divides us, we need to disregard and come together as one.
Yep.
Well, we got to ask ourselves, who's benefiting from the division? Just like follow the money, who's benefiting from the division?
A lot of names come to mind, but I won't say them. Yeah.
Well, we know some of them because, and there's a fellow that I just saw some numbers today. I posted it on Facebook. Before he became a United States Senator, he was worth $2 million. He's been a senator for many, many, many years. Now he's worth $29 million. How does that happen?
On a senator's salary.
Which is a good salary, but it was about, well, this is a leader, so he's making about $193,000 a year. But you got to assume that he's spending some of that money, so it's not, it's his daily, and I'll just tell you who it is. It's the former majority leader of the Senate. $29 million he's worth today.
Who is this? Paul Ryan?
Mitch.
Oh, Mitch McConnell. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how back you went.
Yeah,
Well, with all the perks and privileges, I'm sure they don't actually have to come out of pocket very much for anything. But
yeah, well,
but that still doesn't account for.
But you have some insider information
gaining
as well.
$27 million.
Yeah. So Shelby, Steve. Now I mentioned Josh Barnett a couple times. He's a great guy. He is kind of the epitome of what an American should do, because when he had the mandate go down, he had to shut down his business, reopen. He got so frustrated. He found a way that he could have his business open and running. But he didn't stop there. He went around to his friends in the same industry and helped them get open and them to succeed as well.
Absolutely.
Now, you were both intimately involved in his campaign for Congress. And I know that he's going to be doing some great things as well in the future. Now, as We the People AZ Alliance, are you also supporting candidates like this? Because I mean,
absolutely.
You were there, and I know that you would personally vet
Yeah.
some of the people that are running. So can you go, Shelby? Can you go a little bit more into after the recall happens? What's the future for AZ or We the People AZ Alliance?
Sure. The future is to become a hub or a center for the people here in Arizona to come together, to band together, to create action, to get legislation passed, to help influence those things that come on the table, to preserve our constitutional freedoms, and of course, to vet, find, support, and get on the ballot and get elected great candidates like Josh. Josh is not a guy that should be sitting in an office at a gym. And I'm sorry, Josh, you will end up in D.C. and your biceps are going to shrink.
Gonna waste away, John.
But the vein in your forehead will get bigger from frustration.
Josh Barnett. I think I know you're still on Facebook, Josh, but do you still have your website?
Yeah.
Josh Barnett for Congress. Josh Barnett for, is it the number 4 or written out?
And I might add that one of the
FORAZ.com.
One of the interesting things, you may not know this, but the night we had Chukri here, and we kind of browbeat him, and one of the guys Josh was sitting right here.
He personally handed Mr. Chukri the information. He was there. He saw it, and he actually said, "No, I never saw that. I didn't see that."
You didn't see us, but we were here with Josh.
Yeah, no, I remember. Yeah, you guys
time,
were in the.
so,
yeah, you were swapped. He was over here. You were over there. The studio audience.
So, what you may not know, because we were asked to keep it private, but there's no reason to now, is immediately following this round table where he held Chukri to the fire, and Chukri says, "I want a forensic audit."
Yeah.
We got on the horn with Mayor Giuliani and arranged a face-to-face and pulled Chukri the next day down to the Senate building to look Mayor Giuliani in the eyes and say he would fight for an audit. Now, he hasn't done much fighting.
So what happened?
He got to vote in favor of the audit.
But did he speak directly to Rudy Giuliani and say, "Yes, I will support this"?
Yes.
Yes, he did. And he didn't want to go. He didn't want to go, right, Josh?
No, he didn't.
He was like, "Oh, no, I got this. I'm going to do." No, you really need to go down there and empower yourself. We wanted him to stand in the presence of Colonel Waldron and Mayor Giuliani, hear what they had to say, look them in the eyes, and admit he would do the right thing, which he did. But he hasn't done that. He has not fought.
He
and
did,
that's
but
what
he
we need to
didn't.
see. Right.
He's being lukewarm about it.
And you know the Church of Laodicea. What happens when you're lukewarm? If you don't know, look it up, Revelation. You know, my dad used to always tell me, and Uncle Ronnie, I've said this to you many, many times, but for everybody else out there, and I might use it as a tag from now on, but integrity is what happens when no one is looking. So
do
keep
the
the
right
integrity,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
Let your yes be yes, your no mean no. If you're going to stand for something, do it. If you're not, don't do it, but don't be right there in the middle. We don't need lukewarm.
Always do the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's integrity.
What's the right thing to do right now, Uncle Ronnie?
Well, it's about ready to say goodbye. We're not too far along from the.
We'll see you soon.
Well, we will.
don't want to say goodbye.
We will see everybody soon. Now, I do want to point out what we're going to do Wednesday night on Fighting Back. This is going to be exciting.
Okay, let's hear it.
And there's a guy named Peter Martin. He was sponsored of one of the shows here. He was an expert and a representative for medical care and as well as
They're not. Don't look at her. She's not that old.
no, she's not. I'm looking at you. And that was the Social Security Medicare. And he's done some things at that. But I really met him because he is a quasi-expert. Now, I don't know what quasi means, but he's a quasi-expert.
Quasi?
Quasimodo. Anyway, on global climate change.
Wow.
And you're going to be amazed at some of the myths that he's going to break up, because this is the last part of the puzzle to control the people of the United States and the world. They're doing it now through COVID, and this is the last part of it. If they can put all these things into place, they will control the human race here. And it's sad. We're going to have to take off. We have Steve Robinson and the lovely Shelby Busch and the lovely Ray Michaels.
Thank you so much. Thank you. No, it's great having you guys here. We're so excited to have you come out. Tell everybody about We the People, azalliance.com. Stop by, contribute, participate. Get those things signed for the recall as well. You can do that right here. Uncle Ronnie, do you have the ones for the governor, the secretary of state? Do you have those here?
We don't. I don't believe
so.
so.
All right, can you get those over here to us?
No, we can do that.
Stop by our place over here, 3238 East Bell. Don't forget to like, share, and tell everybody all about
and
this.
subscribe.
Subscribe to Hub Radio Phoenix.
As we want to build this network across the state.
I feel bigger right now. Wait, look, Josh Barnett is bigger.
And yeah.
Just as he's working
okay,
on over
listen,
here.
I'm going to have to end this. We thank Mr. O'Connor. We thank Mr. DeSanti. And we thank Mr. Lutters for being the executive producer.
Thanks, Uncle Ronnie.
And thank you, Ray, for being here. See you Wednesday. Good night.